We've just harvested a whole bed full of onions, and my daughter's very special favourite is caramelised onion chutney. Let's make some. Hello and welcome to English Country Life. Welcome to the garden. Welcome to the onion bed. We've just harvested a lot of really nice both white and red onions from this bed. Unfortunately, a small proportion of them have bolted. Bolting means they put up this flower spike. They do that because they're under stress. This year, probably because of both drought and torrential rain alternating over sort of 2 or 3 week periods, have caused the bulbs to think, well, I'm not going to survive, I'll try and flower and reproduce myself. Now the problem is, bolted onions don't keep. They go off, they rot very quickly. Now, in days gone by, people would preserve those using vinegar and sugar and other mechanisms. And we're going to do exactly that. Our bolted onions are going to get preserved as caramelised onion chutney. Let's go and see how we do it. This recipe calls for a dozen large or 18 medium onions. Although these look like a decent size, we're going to lose a bit as we trim off the flower stem. So I will say, if you're using bolted onions, go for 18 reasonably sized ones. It's going to make a fair amount, so get yourself a big pan as well. First step then, we need to get rid of this flower stalk, and usually you can just peel it away from the side of the onion like that, pop it in your composting bucket, and get a big bucket for composting when you're making this recipe. You're going to need it. Where the flower spike is central, just cut off the whole top of the onion, flower spike and all. But what you can see is an area here in the middle of the onion that will have to be removed when we chop it, because that will be a softened area and won't taste particularly good. So now that we've shown you how to remove those flower stalks, obviously if you're a better gardener than me, you've had better weather conditions than we've had this year, or if you bought your onions, you can skip that part. Let's look next at how we prep the onions before we start to cook them. Once you've removed the flower spikes, if you have any, cut off the top and the bottom of each onion, lay it on a flat surface and cut it vertically in half. If you do have a central flower spike, that's the time to remove it. Once you've cut your onion in half, take off any brown skin and remove any areas of damage or rinse off any little bits of dirt. Before we start slicing up our onions, get a really big pan. Stock pan with a nice heavy bottom is ideal. And just put a small, and I do mean small amount, of oil in the bottom. Just a couple of tablespoons full. One of the advantages of cutting your onions vertically in half is it gives you a nice steady place to rest the half onion on before you slice it up. And we want to slice these onions very thinly as you can. When you've made thin slices across the onion, stack those slices up and cut them the other way to produce a very fine diced onion. The diced onion goes into your pan on top of the oil. If, like me, you struggle with the idea of a standard onion, in this pan there's around about 5 litres of finely diced onions, or if you prefer by weight, round about 3 kilos of finely diced onions. What we're going to do now is turn on a gentle heat and sweat down those onions till they become soft and translucent. Quick shout out to a gentleman called Alan, you may see on here as muddy paws on occasions. Look at the corner on this spoon. Alan made this spoon and others for us, and he's not alone in that. There is another gentleman, Mark, who's also made us great spoons. And that corner is vital to good preserving because it gets into the join between the side wall and the base of the pan and makes sure that nothing sticks. With a round-ended spoon you miss a bit when you're stirring, and it's always there that you get burnt bits that spoil the flavour. So thank you, Alan. It really helps me, and I think fondly of you every time I do some preserving like this. You're a gentleman. After sort of 10 or 15 minutes, your onions will go soft, translucent-ish, and take up much less space in the pan. Time then to move on to the next step in the recipe. This is the rest of the ingredients. What you're going to need is a litre of vinegar, a kilo of sugar, 30 peppercorns and half a dozen bay leaves. Now, with the vinegar, your choice. I'm using half of our own red wine vinegar, which is actually an elderberry wine vinegar, and half balsamic for a little bit of sweetness. Just use red wine, use malt, use cider vinegar, whatever's your favourite. Sugar, I like to use unrefined sugars, and I would advise you try that, but what sort, your call. I'm going to use demerara mixed with muscovado raw cane sugar. That's what I've got lying around. If I was going to buy it, I'd probably buy muscovado, but demerara works fine as well. Peppercorns, black peppercorns are fine. I use Szechuan pepper just because I like the taste a little bit more, but that's just a personal taste thing. That's the pepper. 6 bay leaves. I count them because I want to remove them before we actually put this stuff into jars. A litre of vinegar and a kilo of sugar. And that's it, that's all our ingredients. We'll give that a good stir now, and then we'll put the heat back on. I'd like you to notice that this pan has a volume scale on it, ever so useful. I need to reduce this chutney by more than half in volume. Now if you haven't got a volume scale on your pan, it's not the end of the world. I'll show you how to judge it. What I'm trying to express is we need to drive off a lot of liquid, and that's going to take several hours. There we go, we're up to a vigorous simmer. You want to drive all the moisture that we can at this stage off the liquid. So keep stirring it, but keep it bubbling, because we don't want this to take days and days. It will take at least a couple of 3 hours, but that's if you keep it vigorously simmering. An hour and a half in, and our mixture has reduced from 4.5 litres to 3 litres. But you can see it's still a very loose mixture with plenty of liquid in, so we'll keep evaporating off. One down, 5 more to find. 6 in, 6 out. We got them all. Now at this point, we're about 2 hours in, and you start to worry, if you're anything like me, that this is getting too thick. It isn't. Heating it makes it runnier than it will be on the plate, and you have to hold your nerve with a caramelized chutney and really, really get it super thick before you stop. So I want to get that at least another ½ litre of liquid boiled out of this. So I'll show you how it looks when I'm happy. When half the liquid's gone in your chutney and you're starting to worry about it burning, put your oven on to gas mark 1, 100 centigrade, and put some clean washed jars in to warm up. Here we are then, at a level where I think this chutney is about ready to get put into jars. We're at about 1.8 litres in volume, having started at about 4.5. And as you can see, there's no top liquid as it's cooking down now. And if we draw the spoon through it, you can see it takes its time to flow back together. You can see the bottom of the pan very easily. And those are my rules of thumb. Remove about 60% of the liquid if you've got any way of measuring that. If not, as it's cooking, you want to keep at it until there's no bubbles of liquid on the top of the pan, or until when you draw the line across the pan with a spoon, you can clearly see the bottom and you've got almost a jelly-like consistency of the chutney. Once the chutney's got to the right consistency, set the tray full of jam jars on something heat-proof on your work surface to make sure it doesn't burn. Then use a ladle and a jam funnel to pour the chutney into jars. I'm using pound jars here, so these are the larger type of jars. And it's worth having at least a couple of smaller ones, because you'll always end up with an oddment at the end of the batch, and it's nice not to have to either leave it in the fridge and hope to use it, or to waste it. So smaller jars are always useful, even just to use up the end of the saucepan. Now something you will see, because it's a very thick, and the technical term I think is gloopy chutney, you get a few air bubbles down the side. And I keep one of these Sunday spoons to just pop down the side of the jar and remove any air bubbles. Using an oven-proof glove then, hold the jar and attach a clean, new lid. We keep jars that all take the 63mm standard jam jar lid, and we give one lid to our friends and neighbours and ask them to keep us any jars they get that take that standard lid. And that way we can actually reuse those jars, but also we can buy new lids knowing that they'll fit the jars that we've got. And there we have it. Caramelised onion chutney. Look at it. It's shiny, it's black, it sticks to the spoon. It's thick, it's like jam. But it's got this flavour. This flavour that is like the best hot dog onions you ever had. You know that almost but not quite burnt, slightly crisp, slightly chewy sort of flavour you get? With cold meat, sausage rolls, pasties, with a nice strong cheese. In my opinion, it's the best chutney you're ever going to try. We've still got a lot of onions. French onion soup next, that'll use a lot of them up. If you'd like to see that video, click the subscribe button down there and the bell next to it, and you'll hear every time we post a new video. And while you're there, if you can spend 5 seconds, give us a thumbs up, maybe leave us a comment. It means such a lot to us when you do. But whatever you do, you come back and see us soon. Take care.